everybody. How's everybody doing? Did you have snacks in the back? All right, very good. I just curious, how many are have a law background or want to get into law? Raise your hand. Okay, just so these two know. I'm gonna go off scripts every now and then because that's how my mind works, okay? It's like squirrel, that's how I am. So for Anne and Anne-Marie, tell everybody in the audience and those that may watch on YouTube later on what you are best known for. Start with you. I mean, you get more TV time than I do, so.
Something wrong?
Something wrong?
That's what I'm best known for. Well, you guys know who to call, right?
Tell us a little bit about your journey and your background.
Well, I met some ladies here tonight, and I told you guys I was going to tell you like the real journey and the real background, because for a long time there was a different story, and I don't know. There's probably a handful of people that know. Like up until last year, this just came out. So sorry, this is like maybe a handful of times that I've talked to it, but I wanted to give a real conversation because we're in a real setting, and I'm tired of being something, something that's not me. And so, long story short, I started my legal career on the other side. I was actually behind bars. And this is not a DUI one-night stand. All of us had that, right? I mean, most of us have that. Maybe, yeah. But, so I actually started my journey to becoming a lawyer because I was actually an inmate in Placer County Sheriff's. And I did a lot of things that when I was young, I was around 19 years old, I was stealing. And I was in a point in my life where I didn't care, I didn't have dreams. I was wild. I had a lot of freedom. I came from a very strict immigrant family background where my parents were, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, and I lived for them. Every dream that I had until that point was for my parents. And so I was a lost girl, and long story short, I'm not gonna make any excuses, my own actions, my own decisions. And I ended up in a stealing stunt rage and ended up having a public defender who represented me. And the first incident, he was like, okay, you don't have a criminal background. We're gonna get you, misdemeanor probation. You have to do no time. And I'm like, okay. Next month I see him and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, what the F? And then I see him again. And this is a span of like 6 to 9 months. And so by the time I was sentenced, I spent my 21st birthday in a yellow jumpsuit behind bars. I spent 6 months incarcerated. And during that time, I started asking myself, like, well, what the F did I do with my life? Like, seriously, I was like, it's over. I was already going downhill. That's why I kept doing it. Because, when you go down a slippery slope, you want to know how far you can go. I'm sorry, has anyone been there where you're like, I'm already down. Well, how far? Like, it's already over. And I was like, my career, my future is already over. So I don't even care. And so came out, started really doing some soul searching and saying, is this the life I built myself? Am I coming back like all these girls I spent 6 months with, the recidivism rate, and is this what the future you want? Is this what you want for your life? So obviously the answer was no, and then so I decided to, even as impossible as it was to have felonies under my name, I decided that I wanted to be like a public defender. The last conversation we had, he was just like, young lady, you had such a good life ahead of you, and what are you doing? And he really inspired me. This strange man that I met only to represent me in court. So that was like the inspiration for me to want to be a lawyer, really. And as hard as it was, because I'll tell you, the next part of the journey to become a lawyer was very difficult because of, as you imagine, this background. So long story short, I started on the other side of it. Bet you guys didn't expect that, huh?
But with that being on the other side, you have the empathy that's needed for, people that have bumpy roads.
I hope shapes me, altogether can make me a well-rounded attorney and having that other side of the experience.
Yeah. All right, Anne-Marie, your story, what led you, like when you were younger, to get to the point of putting away major criminals?
Well, I don't have that story, which is very impressive. I'll be straight up honest. I grew up here in Sacramento, big Catholic family, Sandra knows my brother, who we're not politically aligned, I will say that. But it was always a given you were going to college, which is great. I mean, it was, all my siblings went to college. My father was an orthopedic surgeon, you know, successful here. My mom actually passed away when I was a kid from cancer. So I kind of grew up in a different lens. I grew up in a lens of a household where my mother had breast cancer when I was 12. And so I started to learn and appreciate gratitude much differently at a young age. But I went to law school, honestly, 100% for the wrong reasons. I went because I just wanted to be successful. I figured I needed a job, I wanted to make money, you know, I wasn't going to be a doctor because I can't handle the real looking of blood. And so I just decided, okay, I'll go to law school. And so I went to school in San Francisco. I went to undergrad at St. Mary's in the Bay Area, and then I went to USF. And I think it was my first year, I interned for a judge in San Francisco by the name of Lucy McCabe. And Lucy McCabe, if you ever do any research, so Lucy McCabe was a hippie. She represented like Journey. Some of you probably don't even know that band, but I fell in love with this woman because she was just like a rebel, but she was assigned to the criminal courts. And so I had no exposure, you guys, at all to criminal. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go intern for this judge and learn a little bit about law in motion. And when I started reading pleadings and things about criminal law, I realized that I found what I love. I fell in love with public safety. I learned that I was put on this earth to get up in a courtroom, do trials, represent people that have been harmed, and I never look back. I will say this, I'll never forget telling my father. My dad was, you know, successful. He started Sierra Health Foundation, which was an awesome nonprofit. But I remember calling him one day and he's like, what are you gonna do? And I said, I think I'm gonna go work at the DA's office. What the hell is wrong with you? You're never gonna make any money at that. Why would you do something like that? And I said, because I think I'll be happy. And, you know, it didn't take very long for him to come watch a little DUI trial that I had, and he realized, you know, this was what I loved. But that was kind of my journey. And I honestly, I've said this a million times, I never looked back. I felt very blessed to have found something probably similar to Anne, that I found something that I loved. I used to tell people, and I would still probably say this today, if I won the lottery, I would go back to work the next day. It just, because that's how fortunate I felt like I was. I learned a lot over the years, but that's kind of my original start. So.
Okay, very nice. I love the stories. And you mentioned a man that you ran into a couple of times, right? Are you still friends with him?
No, actually, this is the journey of finding him and thanking him. And so, like, I have been applying to other state bars, and every time I have to look at who represented me, and I'm like, I've never, you know, like I said, I've never talked about it, and so it was always like hush hush. So in this last year, I'm like, I'm gonna find this man, and this is part of my journey of kind of healing the 20-something year secret that I've kept. And so so it is part of my journey, and he's on the list of someone that I really need to say thank you to.
Great. Now, both of you, she shares all about women supporting women and uplifting women. So is there any particular woman in your life that guided you through your career? Let's go first.
I would say a couple. Jan Scully, who was an extraordinary trailblazer, first female elected DA in Sacramento, the first president of the National DA's Association. I just saw Jan a couple weeks ago. She was a true prosecutor. She never got caught up in the politics of making any decision based upon political outcomes. So Jan was always, I used to call her my weapon of mass destruction, because she was, when I was lucky enough that somebody said, you should run for DA, Jan was my greatest advocate. And, you know, she kept saying, I have to work a lot more now because I'm helping you with these damn fundraisers. But so Jan was instrumental. But the other person, and I think she's been on this She Shares, is Tani Cantil Sakaui. I did my first murder trial in front of Tani when I was 7 months pregnant, and she's just I've become dear friends with her, but she's just brilliant and on so many levels. But she's one of the most humble, down-to-earth human beings you will ever meet, and I feel very fortunate to have had her as a mentor. So,
How about you, Ann?
So I didn't have anyone in my legal career. My family, immigrant family, we didn't have anyone. I'm the first lawyer, first to go get a degree, post-bachelor's, and so I didn't, I think part of the reason why I didn't was because I was always so embarrassed and scared to really share my story, and I wasn't confident that I was ever going to make it as an attorney. And so I didn't really have anybody like in the legal field, and that's why I think it's so important for me now to do the work that I'm doing, because I didn't have anyone. I had to find my own way. There were so many times I didn't know, still don't know half the stuff I'm doing now or where to go. But I would say, just as a woman figure, obviously my mother. I mean, just her pure strength to raise 5 kids and come to America with nothing. I always got my strength from her and my grit and determination to succeed, but not really in the legal field, no. I hope that I could be that for some people now. That is my hope, to be able to mentor, and that's just part of like my journey now too, is like we need it. And so she shares, thank you guys for having us here, thank you for having this platform.
Do you have a mentee now?
I have several.
She was the first one who raised her
yes,
hand.
I do have several people that I share and
Yeah.
talk to, and from high school to college to law school to first, second year attorneys. And hey, send me a message. I'm your girl.
When I drive around and I see your billboard, I go, "Hey, Ann."
Hi. Good morning, Tina.
I haven't seen them in a long time. All right, so we're talking about the word justice. When you think of justice and you think of the cases that you have lived through, does justice mean something different now compared to 5, 10 years ago?
that's a really hard question. So last Friday, I went and met with a friend of mine who's a movie producer by the name of Scott Budnick. And Scott Budnick is, if you saw The Hangover, he helped produce Just Mercy. Scott's a criminal justice reform guy, and we fight a lot, but that's okay. But I went and met him because he was taking a whole bunch of formerly incarcerated folks on a river trip. And so I was talking to this one young man who I've known for a number of years, who had gone to prison for a long time. And he'd gotten out. His name's Michael Mendoza. He's a wonderful young man. And his comment to me was, that these folks are just trying to heal from incarceration. And I was totally understand it and respect it. But I also understand that on the other side of that lens is that there's other people that have been harmed as well. And so justice is a very complex thing to define. Justice does not mean closure. If you sit with crime victims, particularly families of homicide, particularly ones that are, really bad, children being killed, women that are raped and murdered, you can never forget, as I always call it, the human toll of crime. And so there's a lot of trauma on both sides of the aisle in the justice system. It's the most significant thing is, how do you define what does that mean? And for me, I'm a huge believer in rehabilitation. I'm a believer in reentry. I've gone to prisons and meet with people that have committed homicides, and I've met people on the outside, and I'm very proud of some of the work they do. But we can never, in my opinion, lose the lens of both sides. Because if we forget about crime victims, which sometimes I feel like we do, then we've lost part of that conversation, is what I would say. And so for me, justice is trying to find the right balance. And sometimes the system went way too far. Back in the early 80s, the 90s, with 3 strikes and all that stuff, probably went too far. Some folks might tell you today we've gone too far to the other side, where we've lost sight of it. So one of the things, and this sounds really sarcastic and probably cold, but I've often believed that people don't give a, excuse my language, I'm gonna cuss, people don't give a shit about public safety until they're personally affected. And when they are, I got a call yesterday from a woman who's a Yale-educated psychologist who's worked in the decarceration population for years with girls. And her brother was murdered in Los Angeles, and something happened where her brother's killer got out. And she said that just changed everything for me because, and so it's just, sometimes being personally affected by these types of situations can really change the outlook. But that's where I think we never want to lose sight of both sides of the conversation. Because if we lose one side, then we're going to struggle with going too far one way or the other. That's kind of how I feel.
I definitely agree with you. And about kind of just justice is so hard to like look at and say this is what it means because it's different on who's wearing the lens. And so I can say that as someone who, was a defendant or committing crimes, I've shared that side. I've also will share that I am a survivor, a victim of sexual assault. So I share that side as well. And so we always have to remember, for me, justice, you can never take back what's happened. You can't change what's happened to someone. And the only thing you can do is just try to fight for their story, for them to be heard, for the voices. Sometimes you lose those fights. But does that not mean we tried, right? So like even in our losses, you're still trying to pursue justice, and it sucks to not be able to give justice to the family or the victim, right? Or the way you want it. But I think at the end of the day, as long as we are standing by their side and fighting for them, I mean, saying, I believe you, I don't know if we're gonna win this, because I've taken cases where I don't know if I'm gonna win, but I'm gonna tell your story and I'm gonna stand up for you. And that's justice. I've lost many cases, but I fought for my clients. And so at the end of the day, that's what I'm saying, justice is not about winning. Because sometimes you win the trial, you still have to deal with dealing with lifelong trauma, a loss of a loved one, so that's still not a win, right? So, but you have to take it, as it goes, and with each story. I think that's what it's about, is making sure that the stories are told and heard and remembered and listened to, and at the end of the day, however the result is, it's slice of justice. That's it.
All right. You both are very successful women in the law business. So has that been a help or a hinder, being a woman, and have you had to fight harder to prove yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I think the reason why, so the whole story why I started billboards and advertising was because I didn't see any, in Sacramento, I didn't see any woman-owned law firm advertisements at the time. This is 10 years ago. 2016 is when I started my billboards and TV advertisement. Does that mean that there's no women-owned law firms or there's no powerful women lawyers? No, there are. There are more women lawyers than there are men, right? Law school admissions and but yet we don't see anybody. Why is that? And so part of me, yes, I was, there was a goal of like putting myself out there for a business aspect. It was like, if I don't, because the risk is I do all this, right? I mean, there was no guarantee that I was gonna have anyone respond to my ads. But what I had to juggle with was, how important is the message that I'm sending? And the message that I was sending to people was, hey, look at me. I'm a female, I'm a minority female, and this is my practice and I can help you, and you may not have seen anything, and maybe this is the type of representation you need, because everything else, like we've seen, the older male, dominant, you have that, plenty to choose from. But if you want something different, I'm your girl. And guess what? I took that risk, and I always tell this because this is a very important part. The calls that I got were not because people needed an attorney. It was not because they were in an accident. They called moms, daughters, grandmas, aunties. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I don't need you, but I will call you if I do. But my daughter sees you and is like, she wants to be like you. Or my granddaughter is like hopeful, like, wow. And I'm like, man, this is weird. It took like weeks and weeks, but all the first few calls, I'm telling you, were just people saying, thank you for putting yourself out there. And so yes, we have to fight harder, and it's still till this day. And I find myself in rooms with a lot of men all the time. I'm the only one wearing my shoes, my little heels. And I still, I don't struggle finding my voice and speaking up. But, sometimes I'm just like, damn, let me tell you the woman's perspective. Because there's a lot of the woman's perspective that I think is just, a woman running a law firm is different. Because I'm sorry, majority of the time, and I'm not trying to be, but like, we're handling just even biologically different things, right? Like, I mean, as we like hear about really relevant stuff going on right now with, just dealing with being a woman, hormones, postpartum, depression, menopause. Those are real things that we face as a woman that men do not face. And then we have to balance, okay, trying to be a lawyer, trying to run a law firm, trying to raise a family, trying to remember to sleep and eat, so all that all together. So yeah, in spaces, it's like, I want to fight for that, and I want our voices to be heard, and it's a different angle. It just really is. So yes, yeah, I'm always doing that constantly.
For me, one of my friends gave me a birthday card probably 30 years ago that said, I came to live out loud. And I kind of felt like, as a kid, I was very shy, but then kind of when I found my groove, I felt like I wasn't going to allow that kind of discrimination or whatever it was to ever define me. Did I have issues through my career? Listen, I grew up in a DA's office. That was my whole life, okay? And my friend Monica's back here. Raise your hand, Monica. Monica was a career prosecutor, now works for county council. She's awesome. And in a lot of DA's offices now, you find there's more women or not just DA's offices, public service. You see public defender's office, you'll see a lot of women. Did I have challenges over the year? Yes. I mean, when I was a baby prosecutor, I was on a contract in another county, and my male supervisor starts asking me every day to go out. And I'm a lesbian, people. I'm not on your same bench, buddy. I'm not going out with you. So I kept saying, I'm just trying to be a nice person. I'm just trying to, because I liked him, okay? And I can't tell you, I wasn't sexually assaulted, and I understand that trauma. But that was so stressful to me to get to the point of exercising my voice, because here I am, a young 25-year-old woman on a contract, worried that I'm not going to get picked up as a lawyer. And it took me a while. I wasn't interested in suing. That wasn't my thing. But it took me a while, and I finally got to the point where they took care of that problem. But as time and as time went on, I just never wanted my gender to play a role in how people looked at me. I wanted to earn my credibility. But a couple things happened over the years in cases that I always kind of thought was funny to kind of not really put men in place, but when I was pregnant actually I had my child, one of my kids, I have 2 boys, and I was very proud of the fact that I was in the homicide unit and I was breastfeeding. Okay, that sounds pathetic, but I was like super proud. I'm like, my boss was this guy, Monica knows him, is a legend in the DA's office. His name was John O'Mara. And I remember having my kid in the homicide unit. I'm like, where's the lactation station? Because that's required under the government code, And he was mortified, right? But I was also super proud to take my little breast pump over to trial. I'll never forget telling this particular judge, he's a great judge, Mike Garcia, really great judge. And I walk in with my pump on my shoulder, just ready for the people to do my murder case. I said, Judge, just so you know, I need to stop at 11:30 so I can go back to my office and pump. And he's like, I don't need to hear anymore. You can have whatever time you want off. So that was kind of like, I wasn't afraid to just be who I needed to be, both a mom and a prosecutor. And then as time went on, I'm still in the homicide unit. I'm now 8 months pregnant with my second child, and I get sent out to trial. I'm trying to get out to trial, and I could tell my boss, same guy, John O'Mara, great guy. I said, John, I'm like 8 months pregnant, and I have a case that's a 3-defendant, bunch of white supremacists that killed somebody. And so we had to do, in the world of law, sometimes you have to do multiple juries, which makes it much more complicated, okay? And it means you have 3 juries. I'd never done a 3-jury trial, okay? So I finally kept telling my boss, buddy, I got this baby coming out soon. Oh, don't worry about it. He kept saying to me, don't worry, you'll be fine. And I'm just like, he's blowing me off, right? So I finally just turned around and went down the hallway and asked another prosecutor, a wonderful guy named Eric Kindle. I said, Eric, if this thing comes early, can you take over? Because I wasn't sure. I was very determined to do this trial. My partner at the time, my kid's other mom, was furious that I was doing this. What the are you doing? And so I go to trial. I get assigned. Some of you may know Judge Stacy Bolwer-Urey, who's a freaking brilliant-ass judge. She was like 35 years old at the time she gets assigned this trial. It's her first murder case. I'm like, holy moly, what are we doing here? So I get assigned to do this trial, and I had to do 3 opening statements because it was 3 juries. The night before my third, I cannot, my kid is going crazy in my belly. And I knew something was terribly wrong. So I walk in the next day, and I tell the judge and defense attorney, can we talk? He's like, they're like, yeah. And I go, Judge, I'm going to do this opening statement, and I'm going to the hospital as soon as it's done. And I went to the hospital, and the doctor's like, oh, yeah, you're done. And so for me, it was more, and then Eric Kindle, the wonderful prosecutor, came back in, put those guys in prison where they deserve to be. But for me, it was more of a lesson that we have to speak up. And you have to say, and it's like fundraising. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no, right? So as a woman in these situations, to me, it was just be who you are. Know what's right for you, not just as a professional, but as a human being. And exercise your voice in the right circumstances, if that makes sense.
Excellent.
Sorry, blabbing.
No, I love it when you guys blab. Mentorship is a big part of She Shares, right? Okay, so the mentors that we saw and the mentees, they raised their hand earlier. What does mentoring younger women look like to you? Anne?
You know, I told the story about having, young mothers and daughters and calling, saying they're young girls. And one of the things I did first when it was several months later, I invited a gal. She was like 6 years old, 6th grade, and she's a fan, and she just wanted to meet me. I invited her in my office, and I told her, hey, and this is like the beginning. This is 10 years ago. So she, I was like, come on, you never been in an office? You want to see what a lawyer, here you go. Walked her around, showed her everything. And I got a card from her, I think it was last year, telling me that she graduated, she was graduating and going to law school. This is so crazy to me. Like, guys, I was so happy, and I was like, I remember, because I was the first person. And so mentorship can be in so many different ways, right? This is a great platform. But one of the biggest things I like to do when I hear, I don't know, I met a couple of people here, just when I hear, like, I want to go to law school, we need more women. Like, I just get so excited. Invite people to come to my office, like, do you want to shadow? Offering internships. We offer high school internships just to, like, get people at college, and then law school internships, all different levels. And the biggest thing is just see if this is for you or not, right? It could be, maybe you want to be a DA or maybe civil. I do civil law. Maybe you want to be a lawyer, but you're trying to figure out what kind, right? And so try here a few months. Maybe it's a yes, maybe it's a no. But I spend a lot of my time, like, that is a core part of just the youth in general. But definitely when I see a female young gal out there saying that they want to pursue legal career, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? Where are you going? How can I help you?
Probably the same thing. I mean, I think mentorship is showing up. That's what I think mostly it is. It's having willingness to sit and share your life story. I've always believed when I was the DA, we did tons and tons of outreach things, youth shadow days, job shadow days, crime lab days, because I used to tell kids, I can tell you right now, in my opinion, the definition of success is finding your passion and be authentic to yourself. Doesn't mean it's going to bring money, but it will find you a way in life that you're never going to look back. And so for me, mentorship is doing those kinds of things, going out into the community, maybe it's an individual meetings. I've had lots of folks, people are fascinated with true crime, so people call me, kids all the time, Golden State Killer, all that kind of stuff. They're pursuing careers that maybe it's that kind of career. Maybe it's not law. Maybe it's they want to be a journalist. Maybe they, whatever it is. But for me, mentorship is your willingness to take time to have a conversation with somebody. It may not be a long-term thing, and it may not be somebody that's doesn't seem to have a good trajectory. It might be somebody that, like Anne was at 19 years old, where a public defender becomes her mentor, and now she's going to give back. So it's just, to me, it's like it's being at the right moment at the right time in people's lives.
You know, someone in the audience, or maybe someone that will watch this a little bit later, might be interested in going to law school. So what would you say to prepare them and you know, give them a little checklist?
Well, I got to tell you about my background on that. So my journey to law school was like always knowing that I had this background. But I say this all the time, but I'm not smart. And I say that because when I took the LSATs, I knew that, I was terrible at multiple choice. And I took it the first time, and so I bombed it. I failed so bad. Like, it was like the equivalent of writing my name. And there goes my hope. First of all, you have to get into law school to apply to the bar to be an attorney. I couldn't even get into law school. I kid you not. So I went to Lincoln Law School, which I love. Shout out to Lincoln, because Lincoln is opening doors for people like me, who probably could never be a lawyer if they didn't test well. So I couldn't even apply for McGeorge or UCS. There was no option. Lincoln Law School was the only option for me. And guess what? Even Lincoln rejected me. That's how bad my score was. Lincoln, the dean says, I know we're Lincoln, but even we can't take you. And no, I kid you not. That's exactly what he said to me. And I cried that weekend. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with my life now? Because I can't even get to, this is everything I thought I was gonna do. I cried and cried, and I was like, okay, started thinking, what can I do? I had a criminal justice degree, so I always wanted to be a public defender. And I started rerouting my career, thinking, what can I do now? I can't get into law school. He said, if you're serious about this, if you really wanna be a lawyer, you're gonna take the LSATs again and score 25% higher. 25% higher to get to their minimum, okay? And so I was like, okay, I'm not giving up on my dream. If there's one pebble, one speck of hope, I'm going for it. Because then if I fail and I can't get in, then at least I know I can move on and never look back, right? And so that's what I did. I studied my butt off and scored 27% higher, and I got in. But here, the moral of the story is, the piece of advice I give you is, don't ever give up on your dreams. And don't let anyone tell you, your ability, your capabilities, not the dean. And the hardest part sometimes is the person in the mirror that you're looking at. Like, don't stop believing in yourself. There was definitely, I'm not saying that, I'm telling you, there were so many moments I stopped believing in myself, but at the very end of the day, I was like, you know what? F you. I was like, I'm gonna be an attorney. This is what I'm doing. I'm gonna show you. And guess what? I was the valedictorian of my class, guys. I passed out of 14 core classes. It was 10 or 11 that I had the highest score. I gave a speech to my classmates because I told the dean before he told me, I said, I'm going to be the hardest working student because I want this I need this more than most people you ever come across. And so it was that drive. It was my reason why. Like, my why was so hard that on the days of just getting beat down, I was like, forget it. Like, my why, I'm gonna do this, So overcome those moments in your life, in this journey, law school, whether you're prepping for it or you don't get into school you want. I will always tell you that sometimes the plan that you have in life, doesn't go your way. A lot of things did not go my way, but everything that happened in my life was a lot better than I planned. So don't be afraid that things don't go your way.
I don't think I can top that. If you're thinking about law school, whatever you want to do with your life, I can't emphasize enough what she says, and I believe this to be true. There's a quote from Calvin Coolidge that talks about that the problems of the human race are solved by passion and persistence. You can have an educated derelict, the most educated human being that does nothing. But if you have passion and persistence, that will and can solve the problems of the human race. If you really think about it, look at her as an example. You have to have, listen, I'm not gonna lie, law school's a bitch. It is a bitch. I remember, and I was similar in a way. I was a very good student in high school and college. I studied a lot. I was a terrible test taker. And I bombed the LSAT, even though I studied forever. And then I did the whole Barbary crap, and then I took it again, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna nail it this time. I got nothing better. And I fortunately got in because I had decent grades. And then I was so stressed out about taking the bar because I knew I was a terrible test taker. I got to the point where I took so many prep exams that I knew all the answers. And the bar, for whatever reason, put a bunch of those questions on the bar exam, and so I knew the answers. So for me, I guess what I would tell you is, one, make sure this is what you want, because it doesn't have to be law school. It doesn't have to be a prosecutor. It doesn't have to be a defense attorney. You might go to law school and say, I want to be a civil attorney. Go explore the world. Go sit in a trial. Go sit in a courtroom. See what you think of it. It's cool. I mean, I feel very lucky that I found what I love. But it may not be for you. So for me, though, it's the same message she's going to tell you, which is don't. It's all about passion and persistence. Honestly, that's why I feel like I was successful, because I'm a fucking pain in the ass, honestly. Excuse my language. You have to, passion and persistence is about being a pain in the ass, whether it's to yourself or others. You have to just never give up. Excuse my language, I shouldn't have cussed. Hold it again.
Too late.
I'm waiting for the F-bomb to actually drop, because shouldn't cuss that.
I know. What kind of event did you invite me to? Oh, my ears. All right. How long ago was it when you first had your trials? Your very first trial? How many years ago was that?
So my very first trial was when I got my license. I got my license in 2012, and 3 months later. Well, let's talk about that. So sorry, because it'll make sense. It'll make sense.
Okay.
I couldn't get a job, so I worked for the public defender's office for 6 years while going to law school. The public defender at the time promised me a job.
In this county?
No, in Solano. Well, by the time that I was ready to pass, law school, graduate, it was like, hey, I'm ready for a job. Guess what? They changed public defenders. And that one happened to probably, I don't know, forgot that they made a promise to me, or told me that, I've been dedicating, I was a legal secretary, I interned there. And so, lo and behold, they had a hiring freeze, so I didn't have a job. And so, this is the start of the law office of Anh Phoong. It wasn't because I dreamt it. I always kind of envisioned it 20 years later after I did, public service. But it was because I couldn't get the job that I thought I was going to get, my dream job. I then started applying anywhere and everywhere. Guess what? No one wants to hire someone that went to Lincoln with no experience. 20, 30 resumes out, not even a response to say thank you. So I'm like, what do I do? And my husband, thank God, he's the visionary, TJ, he was like, you know what? You're a smart ass bitch. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Okay, we're out of here. Yes. He's like, you are so smart. He's like, and I was working for somebody that was doing a solo. And it was a he, and he wasn't that great. And I'm like, he was 1 year licensed, and I was like, this guy sucks. And I'm like, I could do better. I kid you not. And I'm like, I'm way better. Not just smarter, but I cared. But I was like, if he could do it, then I could do it. And then, that. And so that's how the law office of Anh Phoong started. And so with that, we talk about my first trial. There was a case that nobody wanted. Someone said, hey, this person needs a lawyer. I'm like, I'm a lawyer. I'm licensed. And they knew that I didn't do it. And I was like, I was bad. I gave it my whole heart and soul. Didn't know what I was doing, but I learned, watched a lot of YouTubes, and I had another person who was a senior, he co-counseled with me. And he was 3 years, he's done one trial, so not that much experience. But this was somebody who was very desperate, begging, because otherwise she would be in pro per, representing herself. And this was a case that was 4 or 5 years already. So I had to deal with a case that was already, all this havoc, came in, did it, and I lost. Of course I lost, right? It was sad. I cried so much. But I'll tell you what was really rewarding at the end of the day. So it was my first opening. I did everything, a whole shebang. And the defense counsel, and I was trying to pretend like it wasn't my first trial. I'm trying to be cool. I'm like, hey, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, no, I didn't do that. No, I watch a lot of YouTube, so I do it. So he came up to me at the end of my closing statement, and he was the senior. I'm going against a partner, 30 years experience, senior for me. I'm like, he knows my bar number. Like, I'm new. He knows. So, but he said to me at the very end, he's like, I want to tell you something. He said that was one of the best closing statements I've ever heard. And I was just like, I was crying still. I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. You know, but but he was saying that, you know, I felt your heart in there. In the closing statement, and that meant a lot to me because, you know, he was senior, and I, even though I lost, it's like you try to take something away from every loss, right? You can't just be like, I mean, I did. I cried for so long. I felt bad for my client, and I was like, I'm not going to be a good trial lawyer, and so that one sticks with me so much.
That was in 2012.
So that was the very first one in 2012.
Okay. And Anne Marie.
Dear God, you're going to make me age myself here.
Yes, I am. No.
Are you going off script?
Yeah. So from the very beginning, your first one, way back when, to who you are today, what does success look like in all those years to you?
God, that's a really hard one to answer because, I mean, I was very fortunate to do, you know, a lot of trials. I did my first 2 years, I did 40 jury trials. That's a lot. They're all DUIs, don't, you know, but they are actually, what's really kind of cool for any of you that have done these, I mean, Monica would know this, they're hard because there's science involved. You have to prove that somebody's under the influence. And then over the time I went up, and most of my career was on violent crime. So I did child abuse, sexual assault, and homicide. Success on those types of cases is, you know, as a prosecutor, you have an ethical responsibility. You do not charge a case unless you believe you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, which means that the prosecutor should win most cases. Okay, that's just, we should, because that's our ethical duty. But you don't, and I didn't, you know, I didn't lose that many over my career. But you're not a good lawyer unless you're willing to take hard cases to trial. It's very, I don't want to say easy, but it's comfortable to get rid of a case if you're too afraid to try it. And there are just some cases out there that need to be tried. That's just the way it is. And, you know, it's the defense. I mean, if you're going to trial on a case that the guy's looking at life without parole, why should he plead guilty? I mean, he's going to get life without parole. So I believe that success over my career, one of the things I reveled the most in was I wanted to go to trial with a defense lawyer that was just as good, if not better. Because, and I used to teach cops that if you want to be really good at your job, walk into a crime scene and think like a defense attorney. Because if you walk into a crime scene and think like a defense attorney, you are going to automatically start to look at what are their potential defenses. And that will make you better at what you are. So, and this sounds kind of pathetic, but when I walked into a trial, I could tell within 10 minutes, Monica, if you know the evidence code better than the defense attorney. And that sounds, I mean, the evidence code is our Bible. Okay, that is the Bible of being a trial attorney. You have to know the hearsay objections, all the objections that a judge is going to rule on. And if the other lawyer doesn't know them that well, you're going to clean his or her clock. And so it was almost like a mental challenge. So over my first trial was before half of you were born. My first trial was in 1990. And over the years, then I got into, you know, a lot of other types of cases, DNA cases and all that stuff. But success that's a very hard one. I mean, to me, you know, what I loved about being the DA was this philosophy that there's more to being a prosecutor than standing in a courtroom. One of my best friends is a woman named Lori Earle, who's the presiding judge of the 3rd DCA right here. And she gave me a card one day when she was leaving to go to another job, and it basically said there's more to being a prosecutor than getting a conviction. So we have to be willing to think outside the box of what does success mean. Success is not always, as a prosecutor, getting a conviction. Success might be we go into the courtroom or we go into the community and we help kids read, because if they can't read by the time they're in 4th grade, they're going to get off track. And so that, to me, is you have to be willing in our profession to look broader than the narrow lane you first start out in, because we can impact our community really more so by looking at that in a much broader perspective, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm proud of the success, I would say, that we had as an office and things like that.
So we're going to have to move to Q&A, and we'll take some questions from our audience here. But what good TV shows should we watch to understand what you do? Can you recommend some really good TV shows?
Suits. I love Suits. Everyone, come on. So, but I grew up like Law and Order. Oh, my Law and Order was my thing, my jam.
Isn't she awesome?
I mean, ones that are really...
I'm going to totally go off script. The best show to watch right now,
Yeah.
Ride or Die. Who's seen it?
Yes,
It is the best.
yes.
It's like Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
It's this badass assassin and okay, sorry.
Yes, no, that's a good one.
So good.
That's good.
Ride or
With
Die,
Hannah
watch
Waddingham. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have time to answer, or they'll have answers for you. Any questions? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. How do you? Oh, there's a microphone there. Stand up and say your name and you know, all that good stuff.
Hi there. Oh, hello. Hi there. My name is Michelle. I'm a lobbyist. And I really resonated with part of the conversation today when talking about being a mom. I have a 2-year-old, and I know how hard it is to navigate that during pregnancy, postpartum, pumping. And I just want to know, what's something that you wish you knew when building your career, and some advice about raising young kids?
Where the lactation station is.
So I will answer that because I am still in the thick of it. I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Okay, and yeah. Whew. So what I would say is that one of the biggest things I could definitely say is ask for help. I definitely do not do it all alone. I have a tribe. I'm so blessed. I have such a good tribe. My mom, my sister, my friends. Like and then talking about speaking up when we need it. More now, more than ever, I think that women, we need to speak up for ourselves, even like, and we need to get over that. Get over, when I say that, I mean, oh, we gotta tough it up, oh, we can do it all. Like, trust me, there's days where I'm like, damn, I got to do it, and there's days where I'm like, I can't do it, I can't, just give me one day, like. So, you know, it's really like what I wish I learned earlier on was like, stop trying to think I have to handle it all, and be okay with, I'm suffering. Like, I'm not, okay, there's days when I'm like, I'm a terrible mom. I forgot to give immunizations for my 4-year-old, guys. I forgot to get them done before he started TK. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So there's days when, and then I'm like at work where I'm like, okay, I'm like, what am I prioritizing? Like, they're saying that this is more. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot that we go through as women. Like I said, that, you know, men do too. There's fathers out there. It's just not on the same level. So what I would say is give yourself some grace. And that you don't have to be 100%. You don't have to, like, you could be tired. It's okay. Like, you just get it through the day, and like stop expecting to like be able to do it all. Like, as much as we can, and we do it all. We make ourselves like day in and day out. There's okay if you have a day or two or a week or a month where you just are like, I'm done, you know. So that's what I would say. Is take that pressure off and be okay with it.
It's interesting, and I mean, your question is related to being a mom. It's just be honest. It's very difficult to be a professional and a mom. I remember when I was running for the first time for DA, and Jan Scully says to me, "You need to go down and visit my friend Jackie Lacey, who was the DA of Los Angeles County, biggest county in California." And I remember I had like 10 minutes of her time, and I just wanted to pick her brain on like, what is life going to be like to run for office, be a mom, try to be a prosecutor? And I looked at her and I said, you know, how do I find balance? And she goes, oh, honey, you're not going to have balance. Let's just be honest. And you have to be, but I agree with Ann, because the most important thing is that tribe. If you don't have someone to pick up your kids from daycare, I mean, how many times I was fined for being late, picking up my son at Montessori, or them calling to say he bit somebody else, and I'm like, okay, sorry. But you have to have a support network. And for me, you know, as a woman that, you know, I had a partner, thank God she was willing to step up. But when that stopped and we broke up, I had to rely on my family. And I could not have done it without my siblings, my sisters. And so just, you know, never underestimate the power of your family to step in and help you. That's kind of how I would, same thing Ann's saying.
Very welcome. Next question. Raise your, oh, there we go, right? Same row.
Hey Tina, it's Lindsay Paulo.
Hi.
How are ya?
Hi.
Good. So first of all, if I could thank you.
Her mic went out.
It's a good question, I can tell. She started.
Yeah.
There we go. Dating myself, a child of the 70s, my dad slept with a shotgun under his bed while the hysteria rapists was terrorizing.
Yeah.
So just thank you for everything that goes on.
You're welcome. It's a lot of hard work by a lot of people.
My question is really for both of you. So I am curious about public safety in Sacramento and California in general. What are your biggest concerns about public safety right now in the area that we live here and then more broadly in California?
I'll be honest, okay? I think we've gone too far. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe in second chances or any of that stuff. I was just earlier today meeting with some probation guys from Los Angeles about how they supervise kids that go to juvenile hall basically for committing homicides. I mean, these are murders. And some of these kids are only serving like 2 years on a murder. Okay, so remember, there's another person on the other side. There's a family on the one side that lost a loved one. But if we're not willing to invest in what is needed to get them back on track, if we're just going to let people out without the services and the needs that they need, we're failing not only them, but we're failing our communities. And so for me, what I worry about, and listen, I'm not, I can be pretty vocal if I need to be. I'll be vocal about what I think has gone too far. When somebody, okay, so some of you may have followed this one case. I prosecuted this guy, I'm going to age myself again, about 25 years ago, a guy named David Funston. I was the prosecutor. It was my first DNA case in Sacramento. David Funston kidnapped 7 little kids, okay? Horribly sexually assaulted them. Most of these kids were immigrant kids. One was Ukrainian, one was Hispanic. Did terrible things to these children. And they were all under the age of 7, okay? So I go to trial on it. It's a 3-month trial, big DNA thing, blah, blah, blah. The guy gets convicted. He gets 3 life terms. The judge says no amount of time will be enough for you to stay in prison. And our California legislature thought it was a good idea to let sex offenders out at the age of 50 as being considered elderly. I'm like, dude, I can't collect Social Security until I'm 65 or whatever. So for me, some of these laws have gone too far. Doesn't mean that I don't think people should get out. It just means that we kind of have lost what I think is that balance of things. So that's what I worry about is what is the future of public safety if we're not willing to get back to kind of the middle, maybe a little left of the middle. So I know that's very uplifting.
No, sorry, I'm sorry, because that's the exact name, that's the exact answer I'm gonna give, and there's just like, that name, Dave, that name, I'm telling you, shaking me when I first heard it, and this was like earlier in this year, and then it came up, and there's more of them, and like that's exactly what I'm concerned about. Like I definitely agree with Anne, and like there's a line, but there's also like I'm sorry, you mess with our children. That's where, like, me, I don't care. Like, you that's the worst. And I'm sorry, like, you deserve to be behind bars for life, if not worse, okay? So, for me, that is the fear that I believe there's hundreds of people down that pipeline that may be released to our schools, our neighborhoods, and, like, that scares me. And so, we've been trying to take action, too. Like, what can we do to change this? What can we do to stop this on the legislative level? Be involved and speak up, right? But that's definitely that's probably my number one thing is the concern about our children.
I believe we have time for one more question over here up front. And thank you for your questions, by the way.
Thank you for this wonderful event. It's crazy. I am a member of the Shares program. I'm working with Jean. And I have my 12-year-old daughter here.
Hi.
Our question in our minds is, how do you think AI will impact law profession going forward?
So I think that's a really good question because that's the fear of like everybody right now, like in every profession, right? And I could tell you what I think that like as a lawyer, as just a lawyer, like being a licensed lawyer, it's gonna make our jobs a little bit easier, right? Like it's gonna be filing pleadings, no more like brief, like, oh man, that's gonna be easy, drafting, all that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, they can't take away our ability, you know, to get up there at a jury and do what we do up there and convince a jury, you know, that this is our case and that you need to vote in our favor. So I don't think AI will ever get to that level. So I think what it's going to do is going to make processes, systems a lot easier. I think there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurs and female-owned law firms out there because you're not going to need that back-end support. It's not going to cost you as much, right? Things are going to go faster and hopefully smoother too, right? So I think that, but at the end of the day, I think that our profession is still going to be non-replaceable in that sense.
I think it's a great question. I use AI a lot right now. I run a nonprofit, kind of a little law firm, and then I also work for the Placer County Sheriff's Office on cold cases. And so I use AI a lot. A couple things I've learned. One, it can be wrong. And I'll give you an example of how I embarrass myself. So somebody asked me a couple months back, hey, well, can you draft up a bill on whatever the issue was? Draft up a legislative proposal. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go on to my little chat, my boyfriend, Chad. He's my only boyfriend. So I asked Chad, you know, help me draft a bill to amend whatever, Welfare and Institution Code XYZ. So I'm all proud. I sent it off to the Legislative Council, and they're like, you know, that was like a law that was amended like 5 years ago. I'm like, damn. So I was embarrassed because what I learned was you can never not check the work. Okay, anybody that knows, I mean, you just have to. But on the other hand, you know, Ann says, is it going to ever get rid of us standing in front of a jury? No. But I have a son, an older son, who's super into AI. He's like, Mom, don't you think maybe someday we should just get rid of judges? Because if we have an AI judge, it's going to be more fair. Maybe there won't be any bias built into the system, into sentencing and all that. And I get it. Maybe should we have jurors that are AI jurors, you know, where you eliminate any issues of racial injustice or whatever it is. You know, we can never get rid of the human factor, but I do get nervous. You know, is it going to replace court reporters? I mean, it probably already is on some level. So it's a wonderful tool, but it also has to be completely checked because otherwise you're going to end up with a state bar fine for citing the wrong old case law that never existed, actually.
Thank you guys for your questions. Oh, wait. Ann has one more comment.
No,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to commend
What's
you.
wrong?
Sorry, nothing. I just wanted to commend Ann on sharing that. Like, I think that's so awesome of you to say I made a mistake. Yeah, no, because that's the truth. You know, it's more important, the value of the lesson, you know, to say, hey, I made a mistake and I even did this. So I just wanted to commend you for that. I think that's amazing. So that's it. Nothing's wrong.
Thank you so much.